about here today. This is not just a one-person thing or a one-race thing. It's about who we all are collectively as a group. So, but you know, today we are going to still celebrate Black independence. It is important, and it is now a federal holiday. Yes, recognized federal holiday. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring forward our first speaker. First Vice President of A. Philip Randolph Institute and organizer for Labor 242, ladies and gentlemen, Locals 19, 52, and 98, let's welcome Paul Thompson.
Greetings, brothers and sisters, greetings. Thank you all for coming. First, I'd like to acknowledge the land that we're on, Duwamish. My name is Paul Thompson, First Vice President of Seattle, chapter of A. Philip Randolph. APRI is a labor community organization. I am a member of Labor's Local 242 and a market representative for LIUNA, which has been a longtime sponsor and partner of APRI. We as an organization recognize the meaning of together we are strong. Mr. Randolph, in 1963, was the organizer of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, where Dr. King delivered his famous speech on that day, the I Have a Dream speech, which he delivered to the attendees at the Lincoln Memorial. Randolph helped organize one of the first Black unions, the Sleeping Car Porters Union, in 1925. And after long struggles, he led for better pay and working conditions, aided by the AFL. The union succeeded in 1937, after long struggles to pressure the Pullman Company to agree on a contract, the first ever between a major corporation and Black unions. We have 150 chapters around the country, including Washington State, one in Tacoma, and ours in Tacoma. Together we are strong. If you look around, you'll see APRI members doing voters registration and passing out pamphlets with the community to stop police terror, systematic racism, and amending the 13th Amendment. To quote Randolph, freedom is never given, it is won. I appreciate you guys' time and thanks for coming.
All right, Paul Thompson. I don't know if Gabe, you're gonna come up next, I think. Yeah, we're gonna get Gabe up here next. Not you? Okay, who we got? Okay, we'll go on to the next one after Paul. So, is Leith here, just to make sure? All right, Leith, I got you, brother. Chair of ILWU Local 19 Education Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, how about Leith? Hail, here we go.
Thank you, Brother MC Harrison. My name is Lee Yasanowski, call 57956. I'm the chair of this year's Local 19 ILWU Education Committee. And the contribution that our committee has made to this event this year is that this 6-panel poster display you see right there on the fence. And it's very important both to us as a waterfront workforce and to this day, Juneteenth, for 2 reasons. These are articles from the Dispatcher. There are 6 panels we picked out of a long series of articles, about 164 pages of articles total, that our union's newspaper published between September of 1950 and June of 1952. That had to do with a major struggle we were involved in over workers' rights and over civil rights against the federal government. A senator named Mr. Magnuson and a senator named Mr. McCarran had passed 2 acts to try to bust all of the militant unions in this country, including ours on the waterfront. The Magnuson Act was what they came at you with if you were born inside the United States. The McCarran Act was what they came at you with if you were born outside the United States. But the idea was that everybody who was a militant trade unionist in this country was going to be labeled a communist, whether they consider themselves to be or not, and pushed out of their jobs. And the way they came at it on the waterfront was they used a particular federal agency called the Coast Guard. It happens to be right there. You see there's a Coast Guard base that happens to be right there. And I mean no disrespect to anyone who's serving in the Coast Guard right now, or even back then, but this agency was used politically to try to bust the ILWU and to bust the Marine cooks and stewards, which was a very important very important maritime union that we were allied with at the time. And in this period of about 5 years, actually, that this program was in effect, it was called the Magnuson Coast Guard Screening Program. It was kind of similar to the Patriot Act's Transport Worker Identification Card Program, except even worse. Even worse. Because that one is mainly about just collecting $135.50 from everybody and paying it to Halliburton. But this one was really about trying to get you off the job. And they screened a lot of people off the job. First they started screening people out of the areas of cargo that were related arguably to the military in some way, and then they expanded it to all commercial cargo. And 70% of the people that the Coast Guard kicked off the waterfront during this period of time were African American. 70%. Now I'm going to read you just a little bit of an excerpt from that first panel. This is from October of 1950. Front page article that our dispatcher newspaper ran. Coast Guard can bar anybody. President legalizes waterfront blacklist. What the employers could not do, the Coast Guard will try to do for them. President Truman made this possible October 18th when he signed an executive order making legal and binding the phony screening program concocted by the Labor Secretary Maurice Tobin and the CIO. The order permits the Coast Guard to blacklist union member and cancel their livelihood. Nor will the Coast Guard have to tell anybody which employer asked for it. The officers of the ILWU immediately blasted the order as a union blacklist dressed up in the guise of a security program. And the ILWU proceeded to fight this with everything we had for the next 5 years. And for the next 2 years, for every single issue of the dispatcher from September 1950 through June 20th, 1952, ran a major article on this fight. That is how much of a priority this fight was to the ILWU. And in June of 1952, we were finally able to announce that a federal court had agreed with us that it was an unconstitutional screening program that violated the Fifth Amendment. The employers and the Coast Guard appealed that. They appealed it as high as they could go. But ultimately, that ruling stuck, and a lot of jobs were saved. A lot of working class homes were saved. A lot of mortgages were saved. But unfortunately, a lot of damage had already been done. The Marine cooks and stewards, a very brave, very integrated, approximately 50% African American union that had been our ally all the way through the CIO and had been kicked out of the CIO for being communists, allegedly, right along with us, was destroyed. The Marine cooks and stewards was destroyed. And that was a very sad day. So I want you all to look at that poster, and there's a key next to it. You can take a key that has a whole list of all the articles that ran during that period of time, and the pages where you can find them on. So if you want to read more than just those 6 panels, take a copy of that key that's sitting in the plastic sleeve next to it. And that's what the Education Committee has to say. Thank you for your time.
Wow, good job, good education right there. Chair of Local 19 Education Committee, that's lead call. Coming up next, Washington Christian Leaders Coalition. Let's welcome Pastor Steve Baber. Come on up, Pastor Steve.
Well, I want to say thank you for being invited here and being a part of this. Take this off here. Do they got another? All right, I work a little better this way. So I want to thank you. It's great to come out this day. Most of you, none of you really know me except maybe 3 or 4, and that's all right. But coming down here today reminds me of a part of my youth. I have a U.S. Merchant's card that I'm grandfathered in with for life. That started because they wanted to open up the ports in the 70s to African Americans. And so I basically worked out here on a tugboat, went up to Alaska when they had the Purdue Bay, drug some barges from here to Hawaii, quit halfway over. But I couldn't go home. I had to wait till I got back here to the Port of Seattle. So seeing this, the ILWU, all of that work, it's still work to be done. What we come to celebrate today with Juneteenth also testifies that there's still work to be done. I won't be long. I am a pastor, but I won't be long. I hear people laughing. Somebody just said you got 3 minutes. Juneteenth, and what I wanted to talk about real quick is the truth will set you free, but lies will burden you. Let me say that again. The truth will always set you free, but lies will, those demons out the past are always looking to come to you. And they're going to bring their cousins troubles, difficulty, and mess. And our country has some unburdened issues it has to address. Telling the truth has become scarce in our society today. There was this orange guy that lived in a White House that loved to lie. And we are still burdened with those lies today. We have voter suppression going on. So that's why I said the truth. They say they love the police until they're trying to take over the nation and they storm the building, beating those people who they say they love with flagpoles that have the flag on them. They're lying. They say they're patriots, but they're trying to destroy this nation. They're lying. The truth will set you free. Lying will always burden you. We have governors in this state that are signing laws. The governor of Oklahoma just signed a law last week. He was kicked off the commission to remember the Tulsa massacre. I don't know if any of you here know, was it Charlie Wilson? Anybody ever heard of Charlie Wilson? Not many. Charlie Wilson had a band back in the 80s called the Gap Band. I don't know if you know the Gap Band. Let me hear it. Has anybody ever heard the Gap Band? Amen. Well, poet Charlie Wilson had a song called Drop the Bomb on Me in 1987. A lot of people don't realize that song was tied to the story that they tried to hide and wouldn't talk about in Tulsa. Tulsa, when they burnt down the Black Wall Street, it is the only city in history of the United States of America that was bombed. When the white community in rage and racism and jealousy burnt down the community, they also bombed it from the air. So Charlie wrote the song, Drop the Bomb on Me. And the word gap was to recognize Greenwood Avenue in Tulsa. I just forgot the other street, but both of those GAP are the streets in what was the Black Wall Street that they destroyed in 2 nights, killing over 300 men, women, and children, and they buried them as fast as they could throughout Tulsa to try to hide that truth. And this governor just signed a law, and there are other governors want to do the same, that says we can't tell our children the truth. What we celebrate today was the truth. It took 2 years for that truth to arrive to Galveston, Texas in 1865. It's not going to be easy, y'all, but I've always said this is not a minute or a moment. It has to be a movement toward justice. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. I was reminded yesterday with my wife as we were going to an event about riding the train, how when I grew up, I got these gray hairs. I rode a train where there were these black gentlemen, very elegant, in white starched jackets, no wrinkles, black slacks, that worked on the train. It was such a luxury and wonderful thing they were the porters, so I want to thank APRI and the work that they do. Again, as I said, I want to thank the ILWU because, as I said, as I look at that Coast Guard, I had to go over there and I had to be tested and all this before they turn you loose on a tugboat or put you out to sea, hopefully to help you learn how to get back home, because the Pacific Ocean can be a mean, mean piece of nature. So I thank you all for coming down today. This is a wonderful event. I want to thank Gabriel Prawl, his wife, Vanessa. I don't know if they're here. I know Gabriel's here. Wilhelmina, I want to thank you. And so we need this truth because they want to hide the truth from you. It is their thing to do that. America needs to deal with some of its burden lies. Most of us don't know Hawaii was taken over by America illegally. If you study the history, you'll find out that they locked up the king and queen, put in a false government that voted to become a state to this country. The Philippines, because I think later on today you're going to go for a brother Lincoln, I believe, a Larkin, and acknowledge his house. Well, the Philippines, this is the arrogance of untold stories. When Spain lost Mexico in the Spanish-American War, as a gift and token to America, it says, here, you can have the Philippines. How you just give away a group of nation to people? That's arrogance. Here, you can have the Philippines. You done whooped our behind, take the Philippines. But thankfully, the Philippine people, because part of what we have to do is talk. This is not just about grievance. This is about we have to talk through these difficult things. They were allowed and given their freedom in 1942 to be a sovereign nation. So we still have work to do. The Japanese Americans were interned, but that still needs to be addressed, and Asian American hate. And as I close, let me talk about it. Unions love this. A worker is due their wages. Now that's in scripture, amen? Don't unions like that a worker is due their wages? Our folks labored for 400 years to help build this nation. Are they not due their wages? That gets to reparations. We have to talk about these things. They may not be easy. So you know, if you have somebody who's an abusive alcoholic, you may love them, but part of the process in counseling and to get out of alcoholism is you first got to claim your crap and say, my name is so-and-so, I'm an alcoholic. Well, what you gonna do now for restitutions and reparations? That's what our nation needs to do. We in the United States of America, we've done some stuff and we need to confess it. Hiding it, that's a burden that you pay and it's too hard. So we need to deal with the reparations issue. It took 2 years to even get the message to Texas. It may take another 30 years or 20 years to get things right. I love what James Baldwin said when he was talking about Kennedy, saying that there could be a black president in 40 years. Baldwin put it in perspective. He said, you Kennedys just got to America here in the 1920s, and you trying to get to the White House. And you have the gall to look at black folks who've been here 400 years and say, if we be good, maybe in 40 years we can have a black president. Folks, we have to talk. And we need to talk with the truth. The truth will set you free, but lies will always burden you. So stony the road we trod, but may we someday stand underneath God. God bless you. God be with you.
All right, Pastor Baber right there. Washington Christian Leaders Coalition. I thought he said it was going to be short, man. I ran over to the sandwich shop, ate, came back. All right, coming up next for you guys. Local 19, the Presidente in the house. How about Rich Austin?
I pulled a hammy. Everybody hear me okay? Brother Ronnie Thomas comes over, he says, you're after this gentleman. Thanks a lot. Hey, listen, it's a beautiful day. It's warm. We got that little bit of a breeze, and thank God, because I'm sweating like Marjorie Green at Judgment Day right now. I'm telling you right now, I'm sorry, I don't like her chances. And we all know labor plays an important role in social justice. And you folks that were here last year for this event, or maybe you saw the photographs, you saw there was considerable more turnout. And so the ILWU didn't take a position whether to have a coastwide position on the Juneteenth and shut down the coast through a stop work meeting. And when we don't do that, when we don't run to the forefront, it's disappointing to see that other folks in labor won't take some initiative either. Our comrade from the laborers, very progressive people in that organization, and some of the other progressive-minded unions, we gotta stick together. We need to do things collectively, and we can in fact change. So this time next year, we're going to be deep in the negotiations on our coastwise contract. I imagine the turnout at the Juneteenth event next year is going to be much different. And I also imagine coming out in negotiations for that new successor contract that the ILWU from Bellingham to San Diego is going to have a Juneteenth holiday in our collective bargaining agreement. And it's about time. And encourage all the other unions to pursue the same. And we got a horrible history in this country. We all know that. It goes all the way back to removing indigenous people from the native lands. It goes all the way back to the philosophy that man thought it was okay to own another man. Horrible history. We've made some progress. Civil rights movement, emancipation. Last night, we concluded our convention, the 38th convention of the ILWU. Brother Willie Adams, an African-American from Local 23 in Tacoma, will be, again, our president for the next 3 years. That's fantastic. Does that fix it? Does that fix it? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We got a lot of work to do. It's not even close. We've got 73 million Americans in this country that's still prescribed to hate. 73 million Americans cast a vote for hate last election. We got a lot of work to do. So, hey, I want to give a shout out. To white America right now. White America, you're here because you're progressive minded. But it's important for us to listen to people of color. How can we fix it? And when we cross that finish line, white America doesn't need to decide when we do. People of color need to tell us, now we're there. We've crossed that finish line. You understand? It's easy for white America to come to a conclusion, hey, you know, the civil rights movement, you know, we've got Juneteenth holiday. Hey, this is happening, that's happening. If the perspective of people of color in this country is they're marginalized and they're not getting a square deal, then that's what we need to listen to. And when they tell us it's done, then it's done. And God, I hope for that day. So let's keep moving forward. Let's keep asking each other, what can we do? What do we need to do? Give me your perspective, because your perspective is your reality, and it matters. We need to keep moving forward. Labor, we got to take a more prominent role in this. If we need to take collective action up and down the coast again, we got to do that. If we need general strikes in major cities, we got to do that. Because our comrades are being marginalized. And I don't know where, in any local union's constitution, where that's okay. So we can't subscribe to it, we got to stamp it out. And along that way, keep making progress, reach that finish line, Don't stop and watch the paint dry. Don't watch the paint dry. Now we got to keep moving on. Thank you for your attention.
Rich Austin, Local 19 Prez. All right, coming up next, Executive Director of Creative Justice. Let me bring up Nikita Oliver.
Peace and happy Juneteenth, y'all. Oh, come on, I know it's early, but we can do better than that. On Liberation Day, let's get it. My name is Nikita Oliver. I am the Executive Director of Creative Justice, and it is an arts-based, healing, engaged space for young people that started first as a diversion program to keep our babies out of the school-to-prison pipeline. And when we talk about liberation, we have to talk about the context of it in a country, in a city that has a huge racial wealth gap, in a city that incarcerates more black people. We have 4% black folks, and yet overwhelmingly in the criminal legal system, the criminal punishment system here in Seattle, King County, the jails are overwhelmingly black. So if we're going to talk about Juneteenth, we have to talk about it in the context of a space that is still brutalizing and oppressing black peoples. I love the idea that we have federal recognition, but federal recognition without an actual change to the legal system, without a change to the material conditions that black peoples are living in, it's just icing without a cake. I want my cake. Y'all feel me? I'm an artist, and Creative Justice uses art to encourage young people to use our voices to tell our stories and to speak truth to power. One of the most powerful things that I've learned about art is you can say something in a poem or a dance or a song that people may not otherwise hear if you just do it in a speech. So I'm gonna share a poem with y'all, is that cool? One of the most inspiring moments for me is when I think about the sewage workers in Memphis, Tennessee, the I Am a Man campaign, talking about deserving prevailing wages and to have dignified working conditions, something we're literally still fighting for. And when I think about the power of that moment of seeing our racial justice movements and our movements for workers' rights, the labor movement, being aligned in a powerful way, MLK was assassinated because those two things coming together brought together the most powerful aspects of uprising in our country. And we're in a time here in Seattle King County, where the Labor Council voted out the Seattle Police Officers Guild, bringing together our racial justice movement and our labor movement, acknowledging that that power is there. So I'm going to do a poem about labor. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. It is February 6, 1919. The city is quiet with resistance. The only voice heard is the thrashing of the tide against the shore, reminding this newborn city, helpless in its infancy, how easily the ocean can swallow us whole if she wants to, how her mouth lay in wait for her first bite should we give her a reason to show her teeth. It is February 6, 1919, and the workers are not abustle about the city. The union laborers find new hips and give birth to the first general strike in the divided states of America. It is February 6, 1919, 12 moons since the end of World War I, when the hungry fled their homes for the Emerald City, a shipyard's promise to stay afloat in a world at war with itself. They put their hands to the barrel of a machine, prepared to chew them up and spit them out poorer again and again and again, building ships like bombs where highly paid overseers, rich shipyard owners leave shrapnel in their skin, a war they had not seen with their eyes, but somehow felt with their bodies. It is February 6, 1919, The city eerily quiet with protest. The workers are not working for the man today, they are working for each other. Finding the 5 digits of their hand in folded palms, solidarity, a balled fist, they fight. They move forward with the spirit and the strike begins. With no end in sight, it is 2021 looking a lot like 1919. Booming wartime economy is booming tech industry. Shipyards are Microsoft or Google or Amazon. Shipyard owners are Paul Allen and Jeff Bezos. Low wage is low income. No jobs is no housing. Shipyard workers are Uber drivers and Amazon warehouse workers, and 2021 looks a lot like 1919. We are the latchkey kids this nation tries to forget but cannot live without. Always more latch than key, more lock than open door, more land grab than land of opportunity. In 1919, the mayor sent law enforcement into the streets to force workers back to the grind, to give their backs for the city to stand upon, to squelch the protest, to end the resistance, to take the voice of the people on February 11th, 1919, when the workers went back to the end of the ocean, to toll at the place where the land meets the Salish Sea. They carried the weight of the city on their shoulders so we could stand taller, be bolder, be stone chiseled by the tide of the ocean, who will swallow us up if we keep giving her reason to. We must learn to draw lines in the sand, find our footing in the groundswell of protest, to stand upright on the beach and resist the erosion of injustice. Our children will be taller if we give them our shoulders instead of our backs. In 2021, it is still clear that the law and justice are not the same thing, that some ships' loads unloaded are loaded weapons, leaving heaps of rubble and children in Philistine. But listen, you can hear it. The city's still ready for the workers to halt us in quiet resistance, the thrashing of the tide against the shore, the picket lines we will not cross, the overcoming of our people, because the people united will never be divided. 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 Thank you, y'all.
Wow, Nikita, good job. Nikita Oliver, Executive Director of Creative Justice. Man, you just got replaced as lead singer in the band too. I was gonna tell you about it, man. You just lost your job, man. Ain't no arbitration on this one. All right, coming up next, Washington Area District Council. Let's welcome Ali Vekic.
Wow, Nikita, thank you. Hi, I'm Allie. I'm a longshoreman in Seattle. We at Local 19 have struggled for many years to keep this terminal, which you stand on right now, operating containers and other cargo. And there is more to this issue besides job growth, our precious urban industrial lands, and the ability to move cargo in and out of our marine terminals. We also recognize that this is an equity issue. When you look at people who have been in our industry for over 25 years in Seattle, you see a lot of white men. Not all, but mostly. If you look at who has been in our local less than 10 years, there is something happening. New in our ranks, we have more black and brown folks, more gender diversity, and more openly queer people. They are young and want to own the work, as it is our long tradition in the ILWU. These changes are a result of our entry-level lottery system, which randomizes who is chosen to be employed and in which order they are trained to succeed in the industry. But when we see an empty terminal, we don't just see less employment. We also see that our union and our industry cannot diversify and reflect who is present in our communities, because the employer will not agree to take in new people when the work isn't there. And so the internal work that the ILWU has to do culturally, making sure our union is welcoming and safe to the young and diverse workers coming in, as well as for those who are already here, is linked to the demand that the port, our city, and our employers understand that this city should remain a maritime city. One cannot happen without the other. Empty terminals do not tell the world that we are a maritime city. Empty terminals mean we cannot bring in new people to keep the ILWU as strong as a progressive force in labor. We ask you to join us as partners and allies in this struggle. Will you join us?
All right, Allie Beckett's right there. Washington Area District Council. Right now we're going to do a song here, perform one number by Stillwater's Band, and then we're going to have our next speaker, Stillwater's Band. Wait, their sax player's still running up here. Hold on.
Test 1, 2. We live in a land that says it is of, for, and by the people. But we also live in a land that believes in trickle-down economics, and somehow this of, for, and by the people has not trickled down to all the people. And so we say today we need to give power to all the people, isn't that right? Power to the people. For God's sake, we got to give more power to the people. For God's sake, we got to give more power to the people.
That be.
Fight the power.
Fight the power that be.
Fight the power.
Fight the power that be.
Emancipation.
Proclamation.
Emancipation.
Proclamation.
Emancipation.
Proclamation.
Emancipation.
Shock the nation.
Emancipation.
Shock the nation.
Emancipation.
Shock the nation.
Emancipation.
Rock the nation.
Emancipation.
Rock the nation.
Emancipation.
Rock the nation.
It's Independence Day, everybody. Somebody said it took 156 years. But we got Juneteenth now, everybody. And it's a national holiday. Can I hear somebody say, yeah? You know what we got to do? Fight the power.
Fight the power that be.
Fight the power.
Fight the power that be.
Got any protesters? Fight the power.
Fight the power that be.
Emancipation.
Proclamation.
Emancipation.
Proclamation.
Emancipation.
Proclamation.
Emancipation.
Shock the nation.
Emancipation.
Shock the nation.
Emancipation.
Shock the nation.
Emancipation.
Rock the nation.
Emancipation.
Rock the nation.
Come on, everybody. Are we going to celebrate? Are we going to have a good time? It's Independence Day. It came early this year. We used to have to wait till July 4th, but it came early this year. Juneteenth, 2001. When I say emancipation, you say proclamation. Emancipation.
Proclamation.
Emancipation.
Proclamation.
Emancipation.
Proclamation.
Emancipation.
Proclamation.
Yeah. When I say emancipation, you say shock the nation. Emancipation.
Shock the nation.
Emancipation.
Shock the nation.
Emancipation.
Shock the nation.
Emancipation.
Shock the
Emancipation.
Shock the nation.
Emancipation.
Shock the nation.
Emancipation.
Shock the nation.
All right, Sweetwater's band right there. Coming up next, got to give a big hand and spearheading this, like I said earlier before. Committee Chair of CTSPTESR and also the A. Philip Randolph Institute. How about Gabriel Prawl?
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Can you hear me? Yes. I just want to welcome all of you again for our second Juneteenth celebration. We want to give thanks to the Seaport Alliance for allowing us for the second time in a row to use this space. Seaport Alliance, thank you for your generosity and solidarity. My name is Gabriel Prawl. I'm the president of the Seattle chapter of the A. Philip Randolph Institute. I'm honored to be sponsoring this event along with the Seattle Committee to Stop Police Terror and Systemic Racism and all the other unions that are representing what the workforce is all about. I want to read a quote from A. Philip Randolph. The essence of trade unionism is a social uplift. The labor movement has been the heaven for the dispossessed, the despised, the neglected, the downtrodden, the poor. So today, on Juneteenth, we celebrate what we call Emancipation Day. I want to tell you one thing. Right now, in ILWU Local 10 in San Francisco, a very honorable revolutionary sister is receiving a lifetime award. And that's a lifetime membership award from the ILWU Local 10. And that sister is Sister Angela Davis. She's receiving the same award that Dr. King and Paul Robinson has gotten for the ILWU. She deserves it. Her work, her commitment speaks for itself. So now I want to move on to this. I want to ask the question, what's Juneteenth? Do we know? Well, I say this. Some of us call it is about, here's what we should know about this important day. It goes by the name of Emancipation Day, Freedom Day, or even the second, I should say, the country's second Independence Day. Juneteenth is one of the most important anniversaries in our nation's history. On June 19, 1965, Major John Gordon Grundy, who had fought for the Union, led a force of soldiers to Galveston, Texas to deliver a very important message. The war was finally over, the Union had won, and it now had the new manpower to enforce the end of slavery. The announcement came 2 months after the effective conclusion of the Civil War, and even longer since Abraham Lincoln had first signed the Emancipation Proclamation. But many enslaved black people in Texas still weren't free, even after that day. That was 156 years ago, when the General Order 3 was read, informing the resident that slavery will no longer be tolerated. All slaves were now free and will henceforth be treated as hired workers. If they choose to remain on the plantation, they are left. I want to follow up with another Randolph quote. At the banquet table of nature, there is no reserved seat. You get what you can take, and you keep what you can hold. If you can't take anything, you cannot get anything. And if you cannot hold anything, you won't keep anything. And you can take anything, you cannot take anything, like I said, without organization. So that's why it's important for us to organize. That's why it's important for us to be united. When we are united, we win. When we work together, we win. When we mobilize together, we win. Brothers and sisters, we got plenty of work to do. Even though we can celebrate that Juneteenth is now a federal holiday and even a state holiday, we still got a lot of work to do. So let's not forget what this country has been built on. Let's not forget those that we need to bring up along with us. The labor movement is one of the most important organizations that works side by side with the civil rights movement, because we got to understand that freedom should always include a good job. Because if you don't got a good paying job, you're still not free. Let's recognize that slavery was pushed as an effort of free labor. And we are breaking the chain today. That's why we as the Community to Stop Police Terror and Systemic Racism, we got a petition online, and there's pamphlet around there that you can see that we are calling for the amendment to amend the 13th Amendment, because we believe that there should be no slave labor, neither in the prison system. And we're talking about stopping the re-entry to this prison system. We have to also be able to provide good paying job for those that are coming out to the prison system. And we call on those that perpetrate in abusing the system for free labor to raise the level of standard to those workers. Give them livable wages. Give them wages that when they come out of prison, that they can live and survive and support themselves. We say, if you're gonna hire people incarcerated, pay them livable wage. And give them the opportunity to keep that job when they're done with their time. That will solve the re-entry program. I want to thank you for coming here today. I want to thank you for celebrating Emancipation Day with us today. I want to thank the A. Philip Randolph for the work that we do nationally by organizing, by educating people, and by working hands in hands with the unions to make sure we can solve some of these issues and legislation that affect each and every one of us. Because the problem that we fight today in legislation that passes doesn't only serve the black population, it serves all of the people of this country. It serves humanity. And for we to be able to make changes, we have to be able to build every person in this country to come up and be a decent human being and be treated right no matter where in the world. Because this is not just a problem in this country. This is a human rights problem. This is a problem that's facing people all over the world. And we need to bring all over the world together so we can solve the problem. I want to thank you again and praise the work that those that are take the time to do to make the change. And I say, happy Emancipation Day.
All right, Gabriel Prawl, President, APRI. Coming up next for you, Deputy Executive Director, And of MLK Labor, how about Katie Garrow? Katie Garrow, here we go.
Good morning, siblings, brothers, sisters. It is so good to be here with you all today. We use these terms in the labor movement to denote family. Is that right? My name is Katie Garrow, and I'm the Deputy Director at MLK Labor. I'm also a member of Labor's Local 242, a construction union here in Seattle. And I want to begin my remarks by acknowledging the work of Black unionists to bring us to today. In particular, people like Gabriel Prahl and Paul Thompson, who have been holding it down and fighting for racial justice long before George Floyd was murdered, long before racial justice was a core component of the work of the labor movement. I know that it takes a lot of emotional labor to be able to engage with a movement that has not always had your back. James Baldwin talked about he insisted on his right to criticize America because he loved her. You all know that quote, right? And I think about how we lean into conflict when we care. And I know that for many Black leaders like Gabriel, they want our labor movement to be better. They want it to be inclusive and representative and modern because they know the power of these institutions. And so I want to thank them for that work. It is not only moral, but it is also necessary for the future of our labor movement to be able to survive. Second, I want to thank the ILWU for hosting this event. You know, the ILWU, as many of you know, since you're longshoremen, that this union has a proud history of standing up against police violence. It was founded after 2 strikers were murdered, right, by the police. This union has shut down commerce 4 times in the last 10 years to end police violence. They shut down the Port of Oakland in 2010 after the murder of Oscar Grant. They shut down the Port of Oakland in 2015 after the murder of Walter Scott. And they shut down the ports all the way up and down the coast for the last 2 years in honor of Juneteenth. I can't think of another union who has done as much to stand in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement and against the issue of police violence. Finally, I want to just congratulate the young people and thank you for your activism. I see many of you who I've seen out in the streets at protests over the last year since the murder of George Floyd. Thank you for your activism and your leadership to lead the labor movement to a better day. You won Juneteenth as a national holiday, and I know that it is solely a symbolic gesture and that it falls short and does not solve the issue of systemic racism. But it is a victory nonetheless, and you deserve this day of rest and celebration. I also want to thank you for the contributions you've made to MLK Labor, the institution for which I work. MLK Labor, as many of you know, and Nikita alluded to earlier, removed the Seattle Police Officers Guild from our ranks 1 year ago today. We did so after a 5-year-long experiment to see if we could change the culture of policing from the inside. And I'm here to tell you, as a person who worked inside that institution for the last 5 years, it did not work. So we had to sever that relationship, and we did it after calls from community came in and young Black workers said they could no longer be in an institution that defended their killers. It's a new era for MLK Labor. We formed a racial justice task force, and we are stumbling along to get our shit together on racial justice, and I want to thank all of you for your engagement in that process. Many of you are delegates and members of our Labor Council. Last year, we successfully backed demands to defund the police in Kent and in Seattle. And just last week, we endorsed an abolitionist community leader for the Seattle City Council, Nikita Oliver. I believe in the change that we're undergoing to become an anti-racist union movement, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because I know it is necessary for us to win. Thank you.
All right, Katie Garrow. Deputy Executive Director, MLK Labor. Coming up next for you, Pacific Coast Coalition of Seafarers. Let me welcome Copeland Downs. Copeland Downs.
All right, thank you. Well, I'm not a pastor, but sometimes I go long. So luckily we have a band here, and just play the music and send me off whenever you're ready. Before I get started, we had a land acknowledgement already, but I want to kind of echo that and start with the land acknowledgement that we're standing here on the ancestral lands of the Duwamish and Coast Salish peoples. Lands that have been violently taken and exploited just as they themselves still suffer under a government that does not recognize their dominion or right to determination. As I was introduced, my name is Copeland Downs with the Pacific Coast Coalition for Seafarers based out of Portland. We're a coalition of industry and human rights organizations fighting for the dignity, rights, and welfare of seafarers. Seafarers are pushed into a racial hierarchy of migrant laborers, just as African slaves were historically, and still are in the context of legalized prison slavery under the 13th Amendment, which we're fighting against here today. The International Transportation Federation has declared the conditions of seafaring today to modern-day slavery, and this is not an equivalent to take lightly, given the horror and severe oppression of slavery in the United States. It speaks to the harsh reality of so many seafaring workers that remain almost invisible to us, and the shipping industry that's rife with incidents of wage theft, extremely long work hours, and very few protective measures for what has been described as one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. On top of this, seafarers have no mechanisms at sea to advocate for their rights, and are often met with intimidation, violence, and in some cases even murder. Enslaved African peoples during the early history of the U.S. were the backbone of the U.S. economy, and countless incarcerated black and brown people are still forced into this role today due to the legalized prison slavery that we've already heard about and that we're still hearing about. Seafarers are another part of the economic backbone of the world today. Their exploitation is a part of the same systems that relies on racist police terror to control our communities here on land. One of the ironies that we've seen during this pandemic is that shipping companies have seen their profits increase exponentially. Why have the conditions for seafarers, their wages and their working conditions, not improved? The industry should be using these excess profits to keep these workers safe and properly paying them for the work that they're doing. At the same time, where is the response from the home governments of seafarers in protecting their citizens from the abuse of the industry and helping them come home safely during the pandemic? On top of this, seafarers do not have easy access to vaccines, both the industry and the home governments avoiding the responsibility to provide them. We also need to be asking, why is it that our communities are over-policed and over-surveilled when there's no surveillance and no policing whatsoever of the labor abuses being done to workers on the land or at sea? We know that black communities face significantly higher rates of policing. We heard the statistics earlier. We know that any activity that happens in a black neighborhood, something totally innocuous in any other part of the city, is seen as suspicious. We've seen that police routinely brutalize individuals for the smallest offenses, and none of this gets scrutinized. How many times have we seen evidence disappear, videos withheld, stories conveniently changed? While communities are over-surveilled, these same watchers continue to find ways of avoiding accountability. Out on the sea, leadership aboard ships can take advantage of the isolation of seafarers to exert dominance and maintain subjugation. The stories we've heard at PCCS from the seafarers themselves are horrific. Captains not providing food or drinking water for their crews, withholding pay, physically intimidating, harassing, assaulting crew members on top of the intensive work hours and work conditions. All of this happens with almost no oversight and no accountability. We even look more deeply at the roots of jobs like seafaring and ask, why are people forced into these jobs in the first place? And we see that the root is the same pattern of police violence and heavy militarization that drives people away from their homes and into the arms of the exploitative labor contracting companies, ready to dispatch workers to whatever industry jobs are needed. The promise of that steady pay is enough to force these people into these jobs despite the conditions. So as we've heard today, the repeated calls, now is the time to strengthen our bonds and organize to fight for more meaningful change in our communities. We have to organize to fight for each other's rights and welfare. Because of the ILWU's inspirational motto reminds us, an injury to one is an injury to all. This is how we should view our responsibility in fighting for the rights, welfare, and dignity of seafarers. And PCCS is the strongest coalition fighting for this along the Pacific coast. PCCS has been active in visiting moored ships in Portland and Vancouver to meet seafarers and deliver care packages that include hygiene items, SIM cards so that seafarers can call their families, and even small snack items to boost morale. More importantly, lately we've been working on vaccination efforts because of the routine ignorance of home governments to take care of this for seafarers globally. This is the work we're doing now, but we know that together we can do so much more, with more members and more partners. Join the Pacific Coast Coalition for Seafarers and help us to continue to build the mission of building solidarity between land and sea. Thank you for having us here today. Happy Juneteenth. Long live international solidarity.
All right, Copeland Downs right there. Pacific Coast Coalition of Seafarers. Coming up next, from Bay in USA, let me bring up Jill Mangalaman. Here we go, Jill. Oh, Jill got the flag, baby. Come on.
Militant greetings, everyone. Happy Juneteenth. First of all, I want to thank APRI Seattle, the Committee to Stop Police Terror and Systemic Racism, and all the ILWU workers who organized today's action. My name is Jill Mangaliman, and I serve on the National Secretariat of Bayan USA, a national alliance of progressive Filipino organizations. We are anti-imperialists, because the Philippines, the country which my family and many other Filipino families were forced to migrate here and to other countries around the world, is not a free country. On paper we are, but still to this day we remain a semi-colony of the United States, and its unequal relations has only caused suffering for my people. Imperialism is capitalism at its most volatile form. Most violent form. It is also the root of white supremacy and racism. We condemn the killings of working class black people at the hands of police. We know the police are not here to serve and protect the people, but to protect the private properties of the wealthy elite and corporations. Yes, we should defund the police and use those resources to rebuild our communities. We join in the demands for community control and justice for all the victims and families of those affected by police terror here in the US. In the Philippines, we too are under attack by a fascist state, which is being bankrolled by the United States. Just a few days ago, the Philippine National Police and Armed Forces killed 7 people, including a 12-year-old Lumad girl, Angel Rivas, and her sister, a lesbian farmer, Lenny, who were harvesting akaba on their ancestral lands. They were all unarmed citizens who were terror tagged and brutally killed by this fascist Duterte regime. 59-year-old Joseph Canales, a trade unionist and environmentalist, died in prison with no access to medical care, terror tagged by the US Duterte regime. Locally, here in Seattle, we have a history of terror tagging by the US-backed Marcos regime, who assassinated ILWU Filipino labor activists Jean Vernes and Silmi Domingo. This continues today. I myself have been terror tagged by the US Duterte regime. But does that mean I'm going to stop organizing? Hell no! The same vicious terror tactics that the US police uses on black people and people of color here are also being used in the Philippines and around the world. In fact, the Philippines takes a page out of the US playbook on how to repress, surveil and disappear dissenting voices. It's called the Patriot Act. It's called counter-protel. It's called the US War on Terror, when we know that the real terrorist is US imperialism. This is why we urge all US-based people to support the Philippine Human Rights Act so that we can cut off US military funding that is going towards the bullets and drones used to repress activists, trade unionists, and indigenous farmers. Those are our US tax dollars that should be going towards creating good union jobs, healthcare, food access, and education, not towards massacring people. Our movements are intertwined with one another. Let us unite against US imperialism, which is terrorizing people here and all around the world. This is the same system that enslaved Black people for profit, caused generations upon generations of trauma, the stealing of lands of resources, and the neoliberal economic policies that exploit workers here and in our home countries. This Juneteenth, know that you are on the right side of history. They can point their guns at us, they can terror tag us, they can take our leaders or imprison us, but they can never stop the building of a mass movement of people rising up. Join just as the Just as the Filipino people want to be free. We support your demands to amend the 13th Amendment and end slavery in all its forms. And we also support the desires of Black people to be free. And we are willing to organize alongside you. Worker solidarity forever! And long live international solidarity! Long live international solidarity! Long live international solidarity! Thank you.
All right, that was Jill Mangalaman from Buying USA. Coming up next, Washington Educators Association Board of Directors. How about Valerie Fisher?
Association. We're so excited to be a part of today's celebration of Juneteenth and the fact that it's now a nationally recognized holiday and signed into law by President Biden. Moreover, Washington, this state, this June, also signed it into law, and it will begin to be recognized in 2022. However, I want to share with you that Washington Education Association, during our most recent rep assembly, unanimously passed the Juneteenth MBI and moved to recognize it this year in 2021. That's good news, y'all. Also, Seattle Education Association, most recently, also unanimously passed the MBI to recognize Juneteenth as a celebrated holiday. Woo! I stand before you today acknowledging that the slaves in Galveston, Texas, getting the memo, the information 2 years later is shameful. It's unforgivable. However, I do want to say that it is now a federally recognized holiday and we have much work to do. So it's just the beginning. I also want to share with you that WEA and SCA recognize that as a union organization, we have been guilty of perpetuating a white supremacy culture. We've been guilty. So the only way you can do better is you have to acknowledge your fault and then start from there. And we have been working tirelessly to change from the inside out, making equity and social justice our main focus as an organization, operating through an equity lens in all things that we do under this current administration of Larry Delaney, President, and Janie White, Vice President. And might I say, she is the first African American to hold the position of Vice President in the history of WEA. So today, we salute Gabriel Paul for putting together this awesome celebration of Juneteenth and for inviting us to be on the right side of history. Solidarity, yo! And thank you for having SCA be a part.
All right, Valerie Fisher right there, Washington Educators Association Board of Directors. Coming up next, IAFF Local 726, Black Brilliance Research Project, and for Labor for Black Lives Collective, how about LaTanya Samir? LaTanya kind of popular. Okay, come on up.
All right. I love speaking. Just kidding. Be nice to me here. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is LaTanya Samir. I'm a firefighter in Pierce County. I'm with IAFF Local 726. I also was co-lead for the Black Brilliance Research Project, which I'm going to talk a little bit about, and I'm also a member of Labor for Black Lives Collective. So I want to start by saying that the police and state violence work hand in hand with bosses and capital to exploit and oppress Black communities and workers. The findings of the Black Brilliance Research Project reiterated that Black communities see the police as an arm of class and state violence, and there needs to be a real shift in how we keep our communities safe. The Black Brilliance Research Project talked to thousands of people living in Seattle and King County, and we asked them what creates true community safety, what creates true community health, and what do you need to thrive. 5 main areas of need came out of that work, with housing and mental health services coming up the most. We heard that housing diversity and the need for more Black-led residential and Black-led commercial spaces was important. Folks were adamant about the need for new, culturally responsive and caring mental health networks led by people with lived experience. Additionally, we heard the need for child care and out-of-school time supports, particularly for children facing systemic violence, trauma, and multi-generational disadvantages. And people wanted economic development solutions that were hyper-local, cooperative solutions that build new capacity and opportunity in community. And people wanted alternatives to the currently harmful 911 and crisis response system, staffed by trained and skilled community members. What we didn't hear in the solutions to safety, health, and thriving was a call for more cops or policing. These are community solutions to the current state of our city, and labor should listen to them and follow their lead. The demand to defund the police and reinvest in community are Black community demands, and therefore are Black working class demands. Black working class demands should be taken on as the demands of the working class and unions. That is why I was so excited to join the Labor for Black Lives Collective in March of this year and learn about their young history. Last year, at the height of the uprisings in defense of Black lives, a group of rank-and-file union members came together to show that labor movements need to be informed by social movements. As the community was calling to defund the police, Labor for Black Lives stepped in and led labor in ousting the Seattle Police Officers Guild, SPOG, from MLK Labor Council. Using cross-union organizing, Labor for Black Lives was able to mobilize rank-and-file members to push labor leaders who were content with the status quo and shift how entire locals voted during the SPOG out vote last June. The anniversary of that vote was just last week. This is the power of rank-and-file organizing. It can shift the consciousness of an entire union. It can move us to a world that we want to live in, one that meets people's basic needs, utilizes restorative and transformative processes to prevent and address harm, and one that doesn't leave anyone behind. I want to thank you all, and I appreciate being able to speak today.
All right, that's Latanya Severe. Coming up next, going to be Adam Arriaga from the Organized Workers for Labor Solidarity. Here he comes, Adam Arriaga.
This will probably be good. All right, hello everybody. How's everybody doing? You guys holding up okay? My name is Adam, and I'm here representing Organized Workers for Labor Solidarity. We're a labor activist group, and I'll give you a little information about us. OWLS is an open, multiracial, multicultural group of rank-and-file labor activists committed to education and action with the aim of building solidarity and fighting spirit within the labor movement. So Juneteenth, it's nice to have something to celebrate, especially in lieu of the tragic history, the violent history that America has had. So I hate to talk about the negatives of what's going on in this country in light of this celebration, but I'm going to bring up a topic that's a little difficult to talk about, and that's racism within the union ranks. Now, I believe 110% that the answer to this is within labor itself, within the union, right? Because without the unions, all us people of color would really not have a chance out there in the workforce. I've worked, as a Latino, I've worked in non-union shops before, and I tell you what, I almost always was the lowest paid out of my group, and I had to work harder than everybody else to get it. But in a union shop, I'm a member of the Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 587. I work for King County Metro. You know, to have the protections of the union has, you know, increased the quality of my life drastically. It's given me dignity in that. So with the issue of racism among the ranks, our union is trying to, the ATU, to address this. And I'm really impressed by how the longshoremen has taken this on head on. And you guys are a great example of what to follow. You know, not all unions, unfortunately, are created equal, but I'm really impressed by the show we have here. But talking about the labor movement, I believe if the labor movement, if unions in general across the country if they don't tackle the issue of racism in the workforce, I believe it could lead to the end of unionism in this country. It is imperative that we fight for equality and dignity of every member, regardless of color, regardless of gender, regardless of, you know, where they're from, their origins, and everything. Sorry. You gotta forgive me. I'm a little nervous talking in front of people. Yeah. So, hold on a second. Jacob, you good? You need anything?
No, I'm good.
So I'd like to bring up a campaign that we have going on, OWLS. We've got a campaign to root out racism at King County and beyond. And when we say King County, we mean King County as an employer. There's, as much as King County would like you to believe that they're, you know, anti-racist and everything, that issue is still so huge among the ranks. So if anybody wants any more information about our campaign, we got flyers over there on the table. So check it out. So I'd like to thank everybody that came in here today. I want to thank the longshoremen for having us out here and giving us a chance to speak in solidarity.
All right, Adam Arriaga right there. Organized Workers for Labor Solidarity. Is Pastor James Bible in here by chance? I just want to make sure we're not skipping over anybody. Oh, attorney, excuse me. Attorney. All right, James Bible. Former president of King County NAACP. I want to acknowledge him, and also Pastor Manet. I don't think he's here as well. Pastor Manet is a Tabernacle Mission and Baptist Church, so I want to acknowledge both of them. So right now, I guess we're going to hit everything up. Oh, who's coming up? Oh, Lee. Come on up, Lee. Bring it, Leaf, back to the house. Get a call back, baby. Come on. Leaf, call. Leaf, once again, chair of ILWU Local 19.
Thank you, fellow worker Ferguson. I've been asked to make one announcement and make some acknowledgments about today. We are approaching the end of the first leg of our program. This is only the first event that we are putting on today. The Committee to Stop Police Terror and End Systemic Racism Seattle has organized 2 events, and this is one of them. Now at 2 p.m. we have our second one, and it's going to be in front of the historic home of ILWU Local 19 co-founder Frank Jenkins. Frank Jenkins lived at 1419 24th Avenue from 1948 through about 1972. And this is a picture, you'll see the flyers that have been passing around, this is a picture of the house that he lived at. This is a picture of what that house looks like now. This is a picture of the house taken back in the 50s. And that house is scheduled to be torn down soon to make way for an apartment complex. So before it gets torn down, we at least want to get some footage of us as longshoremen, and community allies and neighbors of Frank Jenkins standing in front of it and talking about his importance to us, and that house is important to us. Frank Jenkins was a veteran of the 1934 Big Strike itself. He fought in the Big Strike right here in Seattle, fought at the Battle of Smith Cove in 1934, before the ILWU had even been founded. He was the first African-American officer to serve on the Local 19's Labor Relations Committee, and he also served on the Harry Bridges Defense Committee when the government was trying to deport Harry Bridges to Australia for being an alleged communist. And right after Frank Jenkins testified on behalf of Harry Bridges in defense of him, testified to the federal government that Harry Bridges should stay in the United States, Frank Jenkins had his work pass taken away by the Coast Guard. In that same screening program I talked about last time I was up here, by that same entity that is proposing to expand its footprint onto the rest of Terminal 46 and thereby make it hard to bring marine cargo in here, that entity took away Frank Jenkins's ability to work for 6 months in 1955. That's 3 years after their program had been found illegal by the courts. But they still confiscated Frank Jenkins's work pass for 6 months to punish him for testifying in defense of Harry Bridges. So at 2 p.m. we're going to honor Frank Jenkins and his historic house at 1419 24th Avenue. I hope to see you all up there when we do that acknowledgement. And I want to thank everybody on the Committee to Stop Police Terror and End Systemic Racism. Raise your hand and be acknowledged if you served on that committee over the past year. Give everybody a big round of applause for that. I want to thank our band, Stillwater, our MC, Brother Ferguson, our security team, Brother Jerome Johnson, Justin Hurst. Raise your hand if you served on the security team. Everybody, big round of hand. Big round of applause for everybody on the security team. The chair of our committee for this, both these past years, Brother Gabriel Crawl. Big round of applause for Gabriel Crawl. Our cameraman, Alex Raptis, and Jacob Crawl. Thank you both. And everybody else who played any role in the logistics or the background or the work for today, give yourselves a big round of applause for everybody who helped out. Every little bit counts. And I'll hand it back over to our MC.
All right, Lee said all the thank yous, everybody, and I can't acknowledge past that, but also make sure you guys get a flyer from Brother Leith down here, because you got that 2 p.m. coming up, and also all the history and everything else about what happened here with the screening and everything. So you guys make sure you get a flyer from Leith, and hopefully you can make it at that 2 p.m. right there, 1419 24th Avenue, Seattle. All right, we'll want to thank Gabe Prawl once again for spearheading, baby. Thank you, Gabe. I want to thank all the speakers here today as well, and of course all you brothers and sisters who came out to show support and solidarity right now. Let's let Sweetwater Band take us home. Sweetwater Band, baby.
Testing, 1, 2, test, test. That's still water.
Still water, not sweet.
Still, or still waters. That's my accent. People get ready. People get ready. There's a train a-coming, picking up passengers from coast to coast. Faith is the key. Open the doors and board them. There's room for all among the sluggermost. Oh, I believe, I believe, I believe, I do believe, I believe, I believe, I believe, I do believe. People get ready for the train to Jordan, picking up passengers from coast to coast. Faith is the key. Open the doors and board them. There's room for all among those loved the most. Oh, I believe, I believe, I believe, I do believe. Yeah, I believe, I believe, I believe, I do believe. There ain't no room for the hopeless sinner who would hurt all mankind just to save his own. Have pity on those whose chances grow thinner, for there's no hiding place among the kingdom's throne. Oh, I believe, I believe, I believe, I do believe. Yeah, I believe, I believe, I believe, I do believe. Happy Juneteenth, everybody. So people get ready, there's a train a-coming. You don't need no baggage, you just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesel humming. You don't need no baggage, you just thank the Lord. Oh, I believe, I believe, I believe, I do believe. Yeah, I believe, I believe. One more. Crank. Don't you know that's the sound of the men working on the crane? Gang, don't you know that's the sound of the men working on the crane? Gang, oh, don't you know that's the sound of the men working on the crane? Gang, don't you know that's the sound of the men working on the crane? Gang, all day long they go, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah. Can't you hear somebody moan? One of these days I'm gonna go back home. That's the sound of the men working on the crane. Hey, don't you know that's the sound of the men working on the crane? Yeah, all day long they go, looking so high, yeah, yeah. Give me water, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, don't you know that's the sound of the men working on the crane? Hey, hey, don't you know that's the sound of the men working on the crane? And all day long they go, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah. I've been working so hard, yeah. Give me water, working so hard. That's the sound of the men working on the crane. Hey, don't you know that's the sound of the men working on the crane? Gang. Give me water, yeah. Give me water. Oh, oh, don't you know that's the sound of the men working on the crane? Yeah, don't you know that's the sound of the men working on the crane? Yeah, that's the sound of the men working on the crane. Hey, hey, don't you know that's the sound of the men working on the crane?